They told me not to enter the west wing. They claimed the floor was unstable, the ceiling bowed, the air thick with rot and mold. They said the shelves had collapsed, that nothing of value remained. But they didn't know about the hum, that deep, almost inaudible vibration that came from somewhere behind the walls, inside the stone, inside me. A resonance you don't hear, you feel. I followed it. The corridors were darker there, even with the lights on. The air felt heavier, as though it carried something more than dust. The shelves groaned when I passed them, and I saw books without. Titles, spines cracked open like broken ribs. Some were blank, others had pages that stuck together with a black tar-like resin. The scent in that place was wrong, like wet stone and burnt ash. One book was wrapped in cloth, dark red, almost. Black, no visible seam, no title, no clasp. Just there, waiting. The moment I touched it, I heard the first voice. It didn't speak aloud, it bloomed inside my skull like pressure behind the eyes. A voice without sound, in a language I did not know but somehow understood. A word, or maybe a name, not one I could pronounce, just the memory of its shape. It knew me. I brought the book back to my desk. I didn't open it. I couldn't. But for 3 nights I didn't sleep. I began to dream, if you could call it that. Each time I stood before great walls of polished obsidian, carved with endless spirals. I saw mouths with no faces, eyes without lids, gods without names, except one. The name I had heard. They weren't dead. They weren't sleeping. They had simply been forgotten because they had asked to be. I tried to write it all down, but the words bent in my mind. The name dissolved every time I put ink to paper. I thought, I was losing my mind, but it's not madness, it's memory. And memory, I've learned, is dangerous. Now when I walk the archive at night, something follows me. I hear the soft breathing between the shelves. I feel the pull, the weight of something vast curled in silence, just beyond the edge of knowing. I should have left the book where I found it. I should never have listened to the hum. But it's too late now. I think I've already been seen, and worse, I think I'm beginning to remember. That night the book opened itself. I don't remember how. One moment it was sealed in that dried blood silk, untouched and unreadable. The next it lay open across my desk and my hand was resting inside its pages. They were not paper. They were soft, warm, like pressed skin. They pulsed faintly, as if breathing. There were no words, only symbols. Strange, impossible symbols that shifted when I looked away. Most were unfamiliar, but one returned again and again, etched into corners, pressed into invisible seams, scratched deep into the grain of the page itself. When I touched it, it bled. I copied it. First in pencil, then ink, then something else. I don't know where it came from. It shimmered faintly as if it had never been dry. I drew the symbol on the floor beside my desk, and when the lines were complete, the whispering began. This time, it wasn't noise. It was language. I didn't recognize it, but I understood it in the way we understand fire or falling. A knowing buried so deeply inside that it doesn't need translation. The whispers shape themselves into meaning. He waits beneath the roots of breath. We gave him silence. He gave us unknowing. Do not speak the name. It is still, listening. Later that night I collapsed, not from exhaustion but from pressure, like the weight of something ancient pushing down on the inside of my skull. And then I was no longer in my body. I stood at the center of a vast hall, carved from stone darker than night, its walls spiraling infinitely outward. Gravity curved strangely there, space folded like cloth. I saw statues arranged in circles, hundreds of them. Some shaped like people, others wrong, misshapen, opened, waiting. Many had no faces, only mouths, open in silent reverence. Others were covered in eyes, each one sealed shut with black wax. And they were chanting, not aloud, but in thought, as if every figure in the chamber shared one ancient mind. They chanted a name I couldn't repeat, but I felt it carve itself into me like fire. Yulthemar. When I awoke, blood ran from my nose and ears. My skin felt scorched, though there were no burns. The sigil I had drawn was no longer made of ink, or whatever it was before. It was carved into the floor, charred, permanent, as if the building itself had remembered. I tried to deny it, to rationalize. But I know what I felt. This is not just a book. It's a beacon, a voice, a door, and I am no longer alone in my thoughts. The whisper is always with me now, just beneath language, just beneath me. I have stopped speaking. Even thoughts now echo too, loudly. The very act of forming a sentence, silently or aloud, seems to attract attention. The air grows thicker when I think too clearly, as if something ancient is trying to press its ear against the surface of my consciousness. I showed the sigil to someone, a colleague. He was skeptical at first until he saw it. He stared at the drawing as if it had struck him, his eyes dilated, his lips parted without sound. There was recognition in his expression, not of memory, but of ancestral fear. Something buried so deeply it didn't belong to him, but to the blood running through him. He told me to burn the page, and then he said something strange. It's not a name, it's a location. That night the dreams returned, but they didn't feel like dreams anymore. The world around me was folded, curved. Geometry moved like breath. I stood in a spiral city built from dark stone, slick with moisture, pulsing like muscle. The sky hung low and the stars weren't stars, they were eyes. Each blink echoed in my bones. Voices came from below. Dozens, hundreds, layered like old songs sung out of time. They welcomed me, not with words of joy, but with solemnity, like a funeral procession. You are the archivist, they said, and we are what was archived. I looked down. The spiral beneath my feet led somewhere far below the waking world. And I understood. This was not a memory. It was a door, a passage, a place kept sealed not to protect it, but to protect us. I awoke with pain crawling under my skin. There were marks on my arms, spirals etched faintly, like the work of a hot needle. Pressed too gently to scar, too deep to ignore. They did not bleed, but they moved when I looked away. They shifted, aligning with unseen lines in the air. Sometimes they pulsed, sometimes they whispered. I tried to bandage them, but every fabric slipped. The skin rejected concealment, as if it needed to be seen, needed to be read. My reflection looked back at me unfamiliar, the eyes too dark, the smile too still. I wasn't smiling, and still the voice comes, deeper now, like something speaking through water. It does not say words, but I feel its meaning. You have remembered, you are the path. We will speak again through your skin. The name returns again and again in my mind. Not written, not spoken, but present, Yilthamar, the first god, the one who was not born and will not die, the one we were not allowed to know. The spiral turns and I am no longer at its edge. I am being drawn to its center. I have begun to forget things. Not ordinary things, no. I remember names, dates, places. I remember faces and colors. But I have begun to forget boundaries, the line between sleep and waking, the line between what I see and what I feel, the line between thought and intrusion. I'll sit at my desk and feel a breeze on my neck, except the windows are shut and the air is dead. I'll look up from my writing to find the letters rearranged, not into other words, into warnings. Sometimes the ink moves, sometimes it dries into shapes that weren't there before. Last night, I dreamt I was inside a library that did not belong to this world. The air was still and enormous. The books were bound in flesh, some recognizably human, others not, and every spine bore a single symbol, impossible to read unless I didn't try. That's the trick with these names. If you try to read them, they disappear. If you surrender, they come to you. I touched one of the books and it screamed, not aloud but inside me, inside the blood. And suddenly I was falling through silence, spiraling down past broken temples, shattered thrones, and altars drowned in dust. There were statues, reaching toward me, mouths open, arms raised, not in worship but in warning. And I saw them. The Pantheon, not as they were, not as they had been worshipped. But as they are now, half-formed, half-erased, drifting like gods in a sea of forgetting, each one bound in chains of thought, chained by belief, chained by names that had been taken from them. I saw Yulthamar, not a body, but a shape, not a voice, but a pulse, a hunger made from silence wrapped in the memory of form. And I understood this thing was not dead. It had been made into myth, not to protect us, but to protect it from being awakened, because memory gives form, and form gives freedom. I tried to wake up, but I couldn't, because I was already awake. When my body returned to me, I was lying on the cold floor of the archives. My hands were covered in something thick, dark. Not blood, not ink, something older. I had written on the walls in symbols I no longer recognized. They stretched across stone and ceiling like veins, and in the middle of it all, drawn with perfect symmetry, was the spiral. The center was open, hollow, calling. I don't know how long I lay there, hours maybe, but at some point, the lights began to flicker, and the hum returned. Not the faint vibration I'd first followed into the West Wing, but something louder now, stronger, as if it had grown teeth. Something was coming through. Not a being. Not yet, but a thought. It whispered again. No words this time, just understanding. You are no longer archivist, you are now archive. What you know, we become. I've tried to burn the book. I did. I soaked it in kerosene. I lit the match. But the flame went out before it touched the pages. The fuel dried. The match split in my hand. It will not burn, because it is not made of things that can burn. It is made of what we are, of memory and voice and willingness. I've stopped trying to fight it, because I understand now. I'm not losing my mind. I'm being opened, and through me they will speak again. The names are coming back. I do not write them. They write themselves through me. At first they appeared in my notes, short, fragmented glyphs that curled around the edges of the page like vines. I would black them out, tear the paper, burn it. But the next morning they'd be there again, now carved into wood, etched into glass, scratched faintly into the fog of the window, as if something had exhaled against it. There are 13 names so far. I dare not say them aloud, but I can feel their meaning in my body. Each one alters the shape of my thoughts, as if my mind is being rebuilt to house them. I remember one in particular, though I do not want to. Akjural, the mouthless saint, whose prayer is silence, whose mercy is blindness, who waits beneath hospitals and cemeteries, feasting on the thoughts of the dying. After writing that name, I lost the ability to speak for 3 days. Not due to injury or illness. My vocal cords simply stopped existing in the mirror. I could feel them, yes, but when I opened my mouth, the space was hollow, a void. Something whispered back when I tried. Another name burned the skin of my palm the moment I traced its sigil in chalk. The mark never left. I keep it wrapped, but it pulses when I think too hard about it. When I sleep, I dream through its shape. Each of these names is not merely a word. They are keys, and I am unlocking something that should never have had a door, and yet the world is beginning to change around them. I return to a street I've walked for years, a narrow alley beside the old cathedral downtown, and found a mural that hadn't been there before. It was ancient in style, layered in soot and dust, and it depicted a figure with no eyes, its arms raised in supplication toward a swirling black sun. Beneath the figure was a name I had written the day before in my journal. No one else noticed. Dad, when I pointed it out to a passerby, they said the wall was blank, but I could feel it breathing. Later, in the university library, I opened a book that had always been blank, an unfinished catalogue of regional cults, and I found new entries. Pages filled with ritual diagrams, chants, offerings, all written in that same impossible language. One of the cults bore the name of Yulthamar. No one I show these pages to can see them. I think reality is peeling. Not everywhere, just near me, just near where the names are remembered. And the more I know, the more it spreads. Even the birds are acting strangely. I saw one today, perched on the stone edge of the archive roof. Its eyes were gone, yet it followed my every step. It cocked its head, as if listening to a song I hadn't yet started humming. I whispered one of the names. Beneath my breath, barely more than a thought, and the bird responded. It tilted back, opened its beak wide, and uttered no sound. But I felt it in my spine. The name had power, not metaphorical, not symbolic, real, and still the spiral deepens. The markings on my body are growing. They move, they change locations when I sleep. One appeared on the roof of my mouth, another beneath my eyelid. I found a third traced faintly along the inside of my wrist, and when I followed the line with my finger, I saw something impossible. The room around me shifted. The shelves of the archive bent ever so slightly. The shadows twitched against their sources of light, and for a moment I heard the deep sound of chanting, distant but layered, as if thousands of voices murmured in unison far beneath the floor. It was not hallucination. I am restoring it, brick by brick. Word by word, nerve by nerve. I used to think madness was the loss of reason. Now I see it as a clearing, a space carved out for something far older to enter, and I welcome it. The world around me has begun to unravel, not in violent explosions or crumbling walls, but in subtle ways that twist perception and bend reality just beyond the edge of sight. The air feels thicker, denser, like walking through a haze made not of smoke but of forgotten memories and lost prayers. Strangers glance at me in the street with eyes too wide, as if they have glimpsed something impossible. Their faces blur at the edges when I try to focus, shifting like shadows cast by flickering flames. I hear murmurs, low and urgent, carried on the wind, but spoken in no human tongue. I catch glimpses of shapes in the corner of my vision. Figures cloaked in shadow, limbs too long, movements that ripple like water. I have become a beacon, a node where the forgotten gods press against the thin veil that separates their world from mine. The book, once a simple curiosity, is now a conduit. Its pages pulse with a life of their own, and the symbols writhe and change under my touch, as if alive and eager to be understood. Last night, I ventured beyond the archive, drawn by a compulsion I cannot resist. The city around me was different, streets twisted unnaturally, familiar landmarks distorted as though seen through a warped lens. Buildings leaned inward, their shadows stretching long and strange. The stars overhead were unfamiliar, constellations I had never seen, burning cold and distant. In the heart of this altered cityscape stood a temple I had never known existed. Its architecture was impossible, towering spires that seemed to defy gravity, arches that bent space itself. Carved into the stone were sigils I had seen only in dreams, a language older than time, singing silent hymns to the void. Inside I found altars dedicated to gods who should not be worshipped. Statues with faces hidden beneath writhing veils, eyes that moved and blinked. The air was thick with a scent like burnt incense and ancient iron. I felt watched, judged by unseen presences lurking just beyond perception. I knelt before one altar, and as I did, the ground trembled beneath me. A voice, not spoken but felt, reached into my mind. Why do you call us back, archivist? Why break the silence we begged for? I am no longer just remembering the Pantheon. I had no answer. The walls around me seemed to pulse with light and shadow, the very fabric of the temple breathing. The names I had written in my journals thrummed like living things, whispering promises and threats tangled together. I fled, but the temple's presence clung to me like a second skin. At times I catch reflections in mirrors that do not belong. To me, faces with too many eyes, mouths that whisper secrets in a tongue I almost understand. Sleep eludes me. When I do close my eyes, I fall into a void between worlds. I drift through endless halls of obsidian, past windows that open onto impossible skies filled with swirling stars and black suns. There, the Pantheon waits, no longer distant myths, but entities pulsing with power and hunger. They speak to me now, not as voices but as feelings, as tides of memory and desire. They want to be known, to be remembered, to be freed. But freedom may mean the end. I have begun to see others like me, people whose eyes have darkened, whose whispers echo the forgotten names. Some have vanished, others have become shadows themselves, haunted vessels for the gods' return. The city trembles at the edge of waking nightmare. Reality itself feels fragile, as if one more breath, one more word might tear the veil completely, and I am the one holding the key. Since the night I fled the temple, nothing has been the same. The city, once familiar and dull, has become a maze of shifting shadows and half-remembered echoes. Streets twist in impossible ways, turning back on themselves like the coils of some great serpent. Buildings breathe in the dark, their windows flickering with strange lights that pulse in time with the beating of my heart. I have seen them. Others who walk this fractured reality with me. People touched by the same terrible knowledge. Their eyes are glazed, reflecting the abyss where light should be. Some whisper the names aloud, their voices cracked and hollow, while others simply stare into nothingness, waiting for something to come. Last night, I met one of them. She called herself Mara. Her skin was pale as moonlight, her hair tangled and wild, her eyes a deep void that swallowed all color. She said she had been a scholar once, like me, drawn to the forgotten and the forbidden, but the knowledge had taken her, changed her. Now she moved between worlds, neither alive nor dead, carrying secrets that burned her from within. She warned me, they come in the silence between thoughts, in the space where memory fades. They are hungry for form, for flesh, for voice. If you give them your name, your soul becomes theirs. If you forget, you cease to exist. We spoke of the Pantheon, their forgotten names, their lost worship, and the terrible price of remembering. Mara told me of rituals performed in shadowed corners of the city, sacrifices offered in moonlight to keep the darkness at bay. But she warned that these acts only delay the inevitable. They are gathering, she said, not just here but everywhere, in dreams, in echoes, in places where belief once held sway, and when they return, the world will be remade in their image. I feel their presence growing stronger. The marks on my body pulse like a heartbeat, spreading like wildfire beneath my skin. My thoughts are invaded by whispers, half-formed words that claw at the edges of sanity. At times, I glimpse their shapes, elongated. Limbs, faceless masks, eyes that burn with cold fire. Last night I dreamed of a vast black ocean stretching beyond the horizon. Floating above its surface were fragments of forgotten temples, drifting like wreckage in a storm. From beneath the waves rose a towering figure, impossibly tall, its form shifting and flickering like a flame. Its voice was a chorus of echoes, calling my name in a language older than time. I woke screaming, my body drenched in sweat. The room was cold, and the shadows seemed to press closer, eager to claim me. I know I must choose to fight, to forget, or to surrender, but the Pantheon waits patiently. In every shadow, in every whisper, in every breath I take, and the spiral tightens. The city has become a labyrinth of whispers and shadows. The veil between worlds thins daily, and I find myself trapped in a waking nightmare, where time and space fold in on themselves like the pages of a torn book. Mara disappeared days ago, vanished as if swallowed by the very darkness she warned me about. Before she left, she pressed a small weathered talisman into my hand, etched with symbols I now recognize from the book. She said it might protect me, but I feel it growing colder with each passing hour, as if resisting a pull I cannot. See, the archive itself feels different. The shelves creak and groan, the dust never settles, and the flickering lights cast unnatural shadows that shift independently. I sometimes catch glimpses of figures moving just beyond my sight, watching silently. I have started to hear the chanting, again, low rhythmic, rising from beneath the stone foundations of the city. It is not human, not earthly. It is the sound of the forgotten gods stirring, calling their children home. Last night, driven by a compulsion I cannot resist, I descended into the catacombs beneath the cathedral. The air was thick with damp earth, and the scent of ancient bones. The walls were lined with crypts, their inscriptions worn and indecipherable. But here and there, fresh marks glowed faintly, a sigil carved deep into stone, pulsing with a sickly light. In the deepest chamber, I found an altar. It was draped in decayed cloth, littered with the remnants of offerings long past. At its center lay a shard of black glass, smooth and impossibly cold. As I reached for it, the chanting crescendoed, filling my mind with images of vast, cosmic Abysses and stars dying in silence. I felt a presence behind me, massive and impossible. Turning, I saw a shadow coalesce into a shape, tall and indistinct, eyes like burning coals. It spoke without words, its voice a crushing wave of understanding and despair. "You carry the names," it said. "You are the key and the lock. But beware, for to remember is to awaken, and some doors once opened can never be closed." I fled, clutching the black shard, my heart pounding like a drum in the silence. Back above, the city seemed colder, emptier, as if a great hunger had passed through, consuming the light. Now, as I write these words, the talisman grows heavier in my pocket. The marks on my skin itch and burn, spreading like wildfire. The chanting grows louder still, a symphony of forgotten voices rising from the depths. I fear I am losing myself, or perhaps I am becoming who I was always meant to be. The Pantheon stirs, the spiral tightens, and I am no longer certain where I end and where they begin. The boundaries between waking and dreaming collapse around me. Nights are no longer restful, they are gateways. I find myself slipping through cracks in reality, falling into spaces where time loops endlessly and shadows whisper forgotten truths. The city has changed beyond recognition. Familiar streets have become corridors of shifting stone, walls that bleed faintly and ceilings that close in like the ribs of some great beast. People move like ghosts, hollow, eyes darkened, mouths mumbling names I dare not speak. I have tried to reach out, but my voice fails me. Words catch in my throat, swallowed by an unseen force that seems to drain the very essence of communication. Letters on the page blur and twist, forming sigils that writhe and pulse with a life of their own. The names haunt me still. Akshural, Yilthamar, and the others. Each name a tether, pulling me deeper into a labyrinth of forgotten worship and cosmic hunger. Last evening I encountered a gathering, a secret congregation hidden beneath the ruins of the old city. Cloaked figures encircled a black flame that burned without light, chanting in a language that curdled the blood. Their faces were masks of bone and shadow, eyes glowing with unnatural fire. I watched, hidden and trembling, as they offered sacrifices, tokens of flesh and memory, to the flame. With each offering, the air thickened, and the shadows around us seemed to pulse with growing hunger. One figure stepped forward and raised a chalice filled with dark liquid. Raising it high, she intoned a name that echoed in my soul, a name I had tried to forget but could not. The flame flared and a chorus of whispers rose, filling the chamber with a deafening silence. Suddenly the world shifted. The walls melted away into a void of stars and darkness. The flame became a black sun, pulsing with life and death. The figures transformed into towering shapes, gods of bone and shadow, their forms twisting and endless. I felt their gaze settle on me, and though I was hidden, I knew they saw me. The flame's light seared through my mind, burning away fear and doubt, leaving a hollow certainty. I am part of this now. The names have claimed me. I stumbled away, breathless and broken, the echoes of their voices ringing in my ears. The city itself seemed to mourn, the wind carrying the lament of forgotten gods. I do not know how much longer I can resist. The silence is breaking. The Pantheon stirs, and I am their chosen witness. The night is endless. It wraps around me like a shroud, thick with the weight of forgotten prayers and broken oaths. The city groans beneath the burden of ancient secrets, its stones soaked with the whispers of gods who once ruled the void. I feel their presence everywhere, in the rustling leaves, the cold breath of the wind, the silence that falls before a storm. The Pantheon is awakening. The marks on my skin have spread, forming a map of unfathomable geometry that twists and folds with every heartbeat. When I trace them, I glimpse fleeting visions, a vast darkness filled with writhing forms, stars that bleed, and endless skies torn asunder. I have lost track of days and nights. Time is no longer linear but a spiraling spiral, folding back on itself in infinite loops. Memory slips through my fingers like smoke, leaving only fragments of truth and echoes of dread. The voices in my head have multiplied. They no longer whisper but shout in a cacophony of forgotten tongues. Some plead for release, others promise oblivion. Their meaning is clear. The gods are returning. Last night I stood at the edge of the river that cuts through the city. The water was black as obsidian, reflecting a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. From its depths I saw shapes rising, monstrous and majestic, their forms both beautiful and terrible. The air trembled as they emerged, a tide of shadows and light, hunger and grace. They moved with the inevitability of storms, their eyes burning with ancient fury and sorrow. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of their presence. The world shifted beneath me, the veil torn asunder. In that moment, I understood the truth. The Pantheon was never truly gone. They were waiting and in silence, in shadow, in forgotten corners of the mind, until the time was right. Now the time has come. I am both witness and herald, bound to this awakening tide. The spiral tightens, pulling us all into the void between worlds, and as the stars bleed and the earth trembles, I whisper the names once more. Since the awakening, the city has transformed into a place both familiar and alien. Shadows stretch, unnaturally long, and the air hums with an energy that sets nerves on edge. Streets that once bustled with life now lie empty, save for the restless figures who wander in silence, eyes glazed with otherworldly light. The Pantheon's presence is undeniable. Their whispers infiltrate dreams, twisting hope into fear and sanity into madness. Every night the skies ripple with unnatural auroras, colors unseen by human eyes, swirling and bleeding into one another like living brushstrokes painted across the heavens. I have become a conduit, a vessel through which their will flows. My body aches with the burden, marked by glowing sigils that pulse with an eldritch rhythm. At times I feel as if I am unraveling, my essence stretched thin between worlds. In a fevered dream I saw the storm's heart, a colossal, swirling maelstrom of shadow and flame. At its center sat an altar carved from obsidian, upon which lay a chalice filled with blood-black liquid. Around it circled figures cloaked in shifting smoke, their voices rising in a chorus of forgotten hymns. They beckoned me closer, their eyes twin abysses reflecting the void itself. When I awoke, I found strange symbols etched into my skin, fresh and burning. I traced their forms, feeling a surge of power and dread intertwine. The city's folk grow restless. Whispers of disappearances spread like wildfire, rumors of sacrifices offered in moonlit ceremonies, and the faint cries of unseen beasts in the night. Some speak of the Pantheon walking among us again, their forms cloaked in shadow, their hunger insatiable. I sought answers in the deepest recesses of the archive, poring over ancient tomes and faded manuscripts. Among the brittle pages I found a prophecy, one that spoke of a gathering storm, a convergence of worlds where the forgotten gods would reclaim their dominion. The prophecy warned of a choice, to stand with the old gods, embracing oblivion, or to fight for the fragile light that remains. But how does one resist a storm that consumes everything? As the air thickens with portent and the city holds its breath, I prepare for what is to come. The Pantheon calls, the spiral tightens, and the gathering storm approaches. The days have become shadows themselves, slipping silently into one another. With no clear beginning or end, the city is drowning beneath a veil of twilight that never lifts. The sun's light is weak, filtered through a thick haze that smells of ancient decay and forgotten sorrow. I wander the streets, feeling the weight of unseen eyes upon me. The people I pass move with mechanical detachment, their faces masks of despair and resignation. I hear the soft murmur of voices just beyond comprehension, fragments of prayers long lost, echoing through the empty alleys. The talisman Mara gave me grows colder still, its surface etched with new symbols that glow. Faintly under my touch, it is a beacon, drawing the attention of forces both terrifying and enigmatic. I clutch it tightly, desperate for protection and guidance. In the archive, the books seem to breathe. Pages flutter as if caught in an unseen breeze, and the ink shifts beneath my gaze, revealing secrets hidden in plain sight. One manuscript spoke of a ritual, a ceremony to pierce the veil between worlds, to call forth the forgotten gods in their true forms. The ritual requires a sacrifice, not just of flesh, but of memory and will. It demands the surrender of identity, the fading of self into the endless night. Last night, beneath the sickly glow of the blood moon, I ventured to the site described in the manuscript, a clearing deep in the city's ancient forest, where twisted trees claw at the sky like desperate hands. The ground was marked with symbols scorched into the earth, and the air thrummed with raw power. I began the ritual, chanting the names that still burn in my mind. The forest responded, shadows coalescing into shapes both monstrous and beautiful. The trees seemed to pulse with life, their bark shimmering with an eerie light. From the darkness emerged figures draped in veils of smoke and starlight, their eyes burning with cold fire. They spoke without words, their presence overwhelming yet mesmerizing. They offered a choice: embrace the void and become one with the Pantheon, or resist and fade into oblivion. The talisman in my hand pulsed fiercely, and I felt the pull between worlds stronger than ever. I did not choose. Instead, I fled, carrying the weight of the unspoken decision. The forest behind me closed with a whisper, sealing the path forever. Now, as the veil continues to thin and the shadows gather, I am left with only questions and a growing sense of dread. The forgotten gods wait patiently. The spiral tightens, and I stand on the edge of the void. The city's pulse falters, a dying heartbeat in the creeping dark. The skies above swirl with unnatural storms, black clouds crackling with violet lightning that rends the silence like shattered glass. The people no longer speak. Their voices have been stolen by the void that grows ever nearer. My dreams have turned into a labyrinth of visions, corridors lined with doors that open into endless darkness, each whispering secrets I dare not hear. In those dreams, I see the Pantheon gathered in a ring of shattered stars, their forms flickering like dying embers in the cosmic wind. They speak of a covenant, an ancient pact, forged in blood and shadow, binding mortals and gods in a fragile balance. The terms are cruel: sacrifice and remembrance, silence and obedience. To break the covenant is to invite annihilation. I have come to understand that I am more than a witness. I am a participant in this cosmic game, a piece moved by hands unseen. The marks on my skin throb with a pulse that is not my own, and the talisman burns like a brand. Tonight, beneath a sky swollen with portent, I was summoned to a gathering, a congregation of those touched by the Pantheon's call. Cloaked figures encircled a circle of ancient stones, their chants rising in a language that twisted my mind. In the center lay a bound figure, silent and trembling, a sacrifice offered to appease the hungry gods. As the chant crescendoed, the air thickened and the ground beneath us began to shift, revealing a fissure that swallowed light itself. From the darkness, a presence rose, a deity neither kind nor cruel, but ineffably indifferent, its form a swirling maelstrom of stars and shadow. It gazed upon us with eyes like black holes, swallowing all hope and fear alike. The figure at the center was consumed in silence, their form dissolving into stardust and void. The gathered bowed, their voices now a single word, a name I dare not repeat. I stood at the edge, torn between fear and awe, the weight of the covenant pressing down upon my soul. There is no turning back. The Pantheon stirs, the spiral tightens, and the hollow covenant binds us all. The city's veil between worlds thins with every breath I take, like fragile glass cracking under unseen pressure. The nights grow colder, the air thick with the scent of ancient incense and burning flesh. Every corner holds a secret, every shadow hides a watchful eye. The marks on my skin have spread like wildfire, intricate patterns that shift and change, glowing faintly in the darkness. They are no longer just symbols, they feel alive, a living language that pulses with the heartbeat of the void itself. In the shattered fragments of the old temple, now little more than rubble, I found a hidden chamber. The walls were covered in murals depicting the rise and fall of the forgotten gods, titanic figures wreathed in flame and shadow, their faces both beautiful and terrible. At the chamber's center stood a pedestal upon which rested an orb of black crystal swirling, with a light that was not light but absence. As I touched it, the room dissolved into a storm of visions. Memories not my own, cosmic battles fought in realms beyond comprehension, sacrifices made in silence and despair. I saw the covenant broken, the veil torn asunder. The gods, once bound by promises and blood, now free to roam the worlds they had forsaken. Their hunger was insatiable, their wrath unyielding. The orb whispered secrets in a language older than time, filling my mind with knowledge and madness intertwined. It showed me the spiral, a path of endless descent into oblivion and rebirth, a cycle of creation and destruction with no end. I staggered out of the chamber, the orb cradled in my hands, my soul trembling beneath the weight of what I now knew. The city around me seemed to shift, the buildings warping and twisting, as if reacting to the presence of the orb. I am caught between worlds, a beacon and a prison. The Pantheon's influence grows with each passing moment, their power spilling into the mortal realm like ink bleeding across parchment. I hear the whispers everywhere now, voices rising in a chorus of longing and despair. They call to me, beckoning me to surrender, to embrace the shattered veil and become one with the void. But even as the darkness threatens to consume me, a spark remains, a fragile hope that the spiral can be broken. The Pantheon waits. The spiral tightens and the shattered veil falls. The city is swallowed by an unnatural darkness, as if the sun itself has been devoured by the void. The sky hangs heavy and starless, a suffocating black dome that presses down on every soul beneath it. The streets are silent, save for the distant echoes of footsteps that belong to no one. The marks on my skin have become a map, an intricate constellation of pain and power that burns with every heartbeat. They guide me, pull me toward a destiny I neither sought nor understand. The black orb pulses in my grasp, a beacon of impossible knowledge and unbearable truth. It speaks to me in whispers that curl around my mind like smoke, promising power beyond comprehension and a release from mortal bonds. The Pantheon is no longer content to linger in the shadows. They stride through the city in forms of terrible majesty, beings of fire and shadow whose eyes hold the secrets of creation and destruction. Their voices ripple through the air, weaving a symphony of despair that bends reality itself. I stood before the altar of the eternal eclipse, a place where the boundaries between worlds collapse. The air shimmered with eldritch energy as the heavens aligned, the stars bleeding light into the abyss. In that moment, the veil tore completely. The gods stepped forth, their presence overwhelming and sublime. They offered me a choice, a chance to join them, to transcend the limits of flesh and time, to become an eternal witness to the endless spiral. But with that gift came a curse, to lose myself forever, to dissolve into the endless night and lose all that I was. I hesitated, torn between despair and hope. The city waited in silence, its fate balanced on a knife's edge. I whispered the names once more, calling forth the last threads of resistance. The eternal eclipse blazed with cruel beauty, and the spiral tightened around us all. The world has fractured, splintered like a broken mirror reflecting infinite nightmares. The sky bleeds strange colors, vibrant hues that defy reason, casting eerie shadows across a city that no longer belongs to the living. Every corner holds a whisper. Every breath tastes of the void. The marks on my skin glow brighter, etching themselves deeper into my flesh, a map to places I cannot yet understand. They pulse in rhythm with the shattered stars overhead, binding me to the Pantheon's will. The black orb has become a weight, both physical and spiritual. It hums with power, a constant reminder of the covenant I cannot escape. The knowledge it imparts is a double-edged sword, granting clarity while unraveling sanity. In the city's heart, where the ruins of the ancient temple lie, the veil between worlds flickers like a dying flame. I venture there often, drawn by a compulsion I cannot resist. The air hums with raw energy, and the ground beneath my feet thrums with unseen power. One night, amidst the ruins, I encountered a figure, a woman cloaked in starlight and shadow. Her eyes held the weight of eternity, and her voice was both a balm and a blade. She spoke of a fractured light, a chance to mend the spiral and restore balance. But the cost was great: sacrifice, pain, and the acceptance of a truth so profound it shattered illusions. She offered me a choice: to embrace the light and risk destruction, or to surrender to the void and become part of the endless spiral. I accepted the burden, feeling the light seep into my bones, burning away fear and doubt. Yet, even as hope flickers, the darkness remains relentless. The Pantheon watches, waiting, their hunger insatiable. The spiral tightens, the fractured light flickers, and the void waits patiently. The days stretch into eternity, each moment a ripple in the endless ocean of time. The city breathes with a pulse that is not its own, alive with whispers that echo through shattered streets and hollowed hearts. The marks on my skin have become a living tapestry, a web of light and shadow that binds me to the fate of gods long forgotten. They sing in silent voices, telling tales of creation and destruction, of love lost in the void and battles fought beneath alien stars. The black orb rests heavy in my hands, its darkness a portal to realms beyond mortal comprehension. Through it I glimpse the echoes of infinity, infinite worlds unfolding and collapsing, timelines intertwining in chaotic dance. Last night, the veil tore open again, revealing a passage lined with stars and shadows. I stepped through, leaving behind the crumbling city and its silent witnesses. The air shimmered with strange energies, and I found myself in a place between places, a realm where time and space bend and twist. Here, I met figures draped in starlight, their faces obscured yet radiant with ancient wisdom. They spoke without words, their presence filling me with both awe and terror. They showed me the spiral's true nature, a cycle without end, a pattern etched into the fabric of existence. They revealed that the Pantheon's hunger is not merely for power, but for renewal, a rebirth through destruction, a cleansing of worlds old and tired. I returned with their message etched into my soul. The spiral cannot be broken, only embraced. The city waits, poised on the edge of oblivion. The Pantheon stirs, their whispers rising into a crescendo, and I stand at the heart of infinity, a witness to the eternal spiral. The abyss is silent, but it is not empty. It breathes in the spaces between stars, a void alive with forgotten memories and ancient power. The city is swallowed by its presence, shadows folding over one another like ink spilled across a page. The marks on my skin burn fiercely now, their glow casting eerie light in the suffocating darkness. They pulse with a rhythm not my own, sinking, with the heartbeat of the abyss itself. Each pulse is a reminder of the path I have chosen, or that has been chosen for me. The black orb hums softly in my hands, a wellspring of secrets that both enlighten and torment. Its depths hold the key to the Pantheon's true nature, not gods of benevolence or wrath, but entities of indifferent entropy, weaving fate with threads of chaos. I walk the ruined streets, the silence broken only by the whispers carried on the wind, echoes of those who came before, lost souls swallowed by the void. Their voices are fragmented, pleading and warning, a haunting chorus beneath the eternal night. In the depths of the ancient temple, I found a chamber hidden beneath layers of stone and shadow. There, a pool of black water shimmered with otherworldly light, reflecting not the present but the endless past and future. I gazed into it and saw visions of the silent abyss, worlds consumed, stars extinguished, and the Pantheon watching, waiting for the final unraveling. The choice I face is clear yet unbearable: to surrender to the silent abyss, embracing the oblivion it offers, or to fight against the inevitable spiral that drags us all down. As the city holds its breath, I stand at the edge, caught between despair and defiance. The abyss waits, the spiral tightens, and silence reigns supreme. The city lies beneath a sky rent asunder, streaks of bleeding light carving jagged paths through the void. A final breath before the end, or perhaps the beginning of something else. Something beyond comprehension. The marks on my skin flare like stars igniting, burning with the fierce light of defiance. Each symbol a testament to the struggle within me, a fragile beacon against the encroaching darkness. The black orb pulses in my grasp, now a companion and a curse. It reveals truths too vast to hold, visions of worlds crumbling and rising anew. Through its depths I glimpse the Pantheon in their full glory, colossal, terrifying, and yet hauntingly beautiful. The people of the city gather in secret, drawn to the faint hope that lingers like embers in the ash. We prepare for the inevitable, a final stand against the unraveling spiral. I have learned that the Pantheon feeds not only on destruction, but on memory and belief. To resist them is to hold on to the stories, the legacies, the whispers of forgotten gods who once walked among us. Tonight, beneath a fractured moon, we light the last beacon, a pyre of remembrance and rebellion. The flames dance wildly, reaching toward the sky, a signal to those who still believe. The Pantheon watches, their eyes like distant galaxies. Their hunger is vast, but so is our resolve. The spiral tightens, the last beacon burns bright, and the final chapter nears. The night is thick with silence, heavy as the weight of all that has come before. The city stands on the edge of oblivion, its bones trembling beneath the silent gaze of the Pantheon. Stars flicker and fade, swallowed by the consuming void that spirals ever inward. I stand alone at the heart of the ancient ruins, clutching the black orb, a symbol of knowledge and doom intertwined. The air hums with raw power, the pulse of creation and destruction entwined in a single breath. Around me, shadows twist and writhe, whispering promises of oblivion and rebirth. The Pantheon emerges from the void, colossal and unknowable, their forms shifting like smoke and starlight. Their voices merge into a chorus that shakes the very fabric of existence, a song of endings and beginnings, of cycles unbroken and eternal. I feel the spiral pull at my soul, a force both terrifying and seductive. It offers release from suffering, a return to the void from which all things spring and to which all must return. Yet within that pull a flicker of defiance burns. The memories, the stories, the whispers of those who dared to dream, they resonate within me, a fragile thread of light in the endless dark. With the orb raised high, I call upon that light, weaving it into a beacon that pierces the darkness. The Pantheon falters, their song wavering against the strength of human will. But the spiral is eternal. The cycle never ends. As the first light of dawn struggles to break through the fading night, I understand the truth. The spiral will always tighten, the void will always call, and the whispers from the Forgotten Pantheon will never truly be silenced. We are all part of the endless spiral, creators and destroyers, believers and forgotten, forever entwined in the dance of oblivion and hope. The end is never the end. It is only another beginning. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more dark myths and tales from the void. What did you think of Whispers from the Forgotten Pantheon? Let me know in the comments below. Your thoughts and theories mean a lot. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the shadows. Until next time, beware the whispers in the dark.